Further discussion. Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to speak in favor of this resolution. This is one of the most important resolutions we'll consider, one of the most important actions we will take. I would like to address some of the concerns that you've all received by constituents who are concerned about our Constitution and love our Constitution. Their first and primary concern is that this event will destroy our Constitution. They characterize it as a constitutional convention, and that is the first error. This is not a proposed constitutional convention. This is an amendment convention of the states. State delegates gather to propose amendments to the Constitution. It cannot run away. It is limited in scope by the call for the convention, by the resolutions. It's limited by restrictions on delegates that will attend the convention. It's limited by restrictive rules and procedures that the prior speaker referred to as we meet in an assembly of state legislatures and talk about rules and procedures. And finally, the ultimate protection is ratification by 3/4 of the states. Whatever comes out of this amendment convention must be ratified by 3/4 of the states. If the states don't like it, they defeat it. It takes only 13 states to defeat whatever is proposed by this convention. I also must refer to the purpose of Article 5 itself. Article 5 provides, as you know, 2 ways to amend the Constitution. One is through Congress. Congress initiates, and that is the procedure typically followed. Our founders purposely provided a second way to amend the Constitution for this very situation in which Congress would refuse to act. Congress would refuse to amend. The founders provided this way for the states themselves to rise up and propose changes to the Constitution that Congress would refuse to follow. It is interesting to me that the most ardent defenders of the Constitution are the most hesitant to trust in the Constitution, to trust in Article 5 provided and the procedure provided by our founders for states to reassert themselves. Finally, once we satisfy the primary concerns of the opponents of an amendment convention, all they can say is, well, yeah, I see all of this, but now is not the time, they say. Well, I can tell you that now is the time. There is no better time. All 3 branches of the federal government have exceeded their delegated powers under the Constitution and have encroached on the sovereignty of the states. The President issues unauthorized executive orders. His administrators issue unauthorized rulings, regulations that go beyond the scope of the statutes. One example is the attempt to outlaw the use of coal in our country. Congress appears to be paralyzed. We talk about 3 branches of government and checks and balances, but Congress appears most of the time paralyzed, unable to check the excesses of the President or his administrative agencies. And they are, of course, faced in the Senate by the filibuster power that requires 60 votes for everything and is difficult to get. And finally, Congress has exceeded its power by addressing matters traditionally left to the states: health care and education, police power, family law, and so forth. The federal courts have also exceeded their powers by encroaching into areas traditionally reserved to the states. 20% of our state budget now is focused on administering and enforcing federal programs. States are now little more than agencies of the federal government to carry out federal programs. Now is the time for states to push back. As you know, I'm a strong proponent of a countermand amendment, which would authorize states to override provisions of federal law, whether statute or regulation. The governor of Texas recently issued a Texas plan which would include a countermand amendment that would authorize states to override federal provisions deemed harmful to the states. Today, the federal government would be totally unrecognizable to our founders. It has so far exceeded its delegated powers. Today, the Constitution is hanging in the balance, And now is the time for the states to step forward, assert themselves, and rebalance the federalism in this country. Thank you very much.